Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. On a very recent class titled, Does God Care About My Hygiene?, in which we discussed not only issues of hygiene, but also how we dress and how we take care of our bodies and what that means to God and why that it's important. So we had a comment, again, from a very dedicated viewer, Anna, and she asked the following question. She says, how to know in what way exactly one has to act, i.e., to eat, to dress, to take care of one's body, etc., in accordance with God's will. So the answer is that it's very simple. It could be found in the Torah. Not all bunched in one place, but for example, the Torah does tell us about the dietary laws, starting from the very basic, the very obvious of not eating, quote, a limb off a living animal. In other words, not to cause unnecessary pain to any living thing by putting it to death, by making it fit to eat in a humane manner. Also, the Torah prescribes what are the, quote, clean animals, what are the unclean animals. And we had already discussed it in a previous class regarding this concept that although we don't really know the reason for why this animal is kosher and this other animal is not, but we do find inherent in those that are not kosher that they have certain character traits that are just not good ones, or I should say terrible ones. There are, for example, birds of prey, carnivores, animals that attack other animals and eat on other animals. And since what we eat becomes part of us, that God does not want it to become part of us and become integrated in our bloodstream, thus in our hearts, in our emotions, and then in our minds, in our intellect. That's an example with food. God even tells us, for example, and again, you have to look up the sources. God tells us when it comes to eating meat, consuming meat, God says, when you desire to eat meat, you have a desire to eat meat, that's the expression he uses, I'm paraphrasing. The sages tell us that is telling us that meat you eat only as a special thing. Today, perhaps it's more common, it's more prevalent. People eat meat every day. But really, an idea, meat is something we need for our health. That's absolutely. But it's not just something you just consume all the time. It's something special. That's just another example when it comes to eating. Let's go when it comes to clothing, when it comes to how we get dressed. So, obviously, the first one that comes to mind is where God says that a man should not wear women's garb and a woman should not wear man's clothing. I mean, a man should not dress like a woman should not dress like a man. In other words, God's telling us there are very, very distinct categories. Men dress like men, women dress like women. A man should look like a man, a woman should look like a woman. So in God's world, the way he wants it is that there is a distinction. Now, obviously, if we go back to the very beginning, where God says that man was created in the image of God, that tells us that although it's not in a literal sense, but still the human body is something that needs to be revered. The human body is something that needs to be treated properly. And therefore, when you dress the human body, you do it accordingly, right? When you have a nice object, you don't just put it in a very dirty bag. So here already is a hint, in essence, to tell us that you should be dressing in clean clothing, and presenting yourself, carrying yourself in a very respectable manner, because you're not just carrying yourself, you're carrying, quote, an image of God. Now, when it comes to, for example, how to take care of one's body, the Torah, or like the example that we used in that class that you asked a question on, the Torah is even telling us how to take care of our needs when you have to go to the bathroom. Now, let's take, for example, the Torah says that you're not allowed to disrespect your body. You should take care of your health. It says, quote, you should be very, very careful. You should safeguard and preserve your souls, meaning your life energy. You have to take care of your health. You cannot eat things that are not good or conducive for your health. You cannot do things that bring unnecessary disgust and pain to the body, and so on and so forth. I think when one looks, the bottom line, just to summarize, when one looks in the Torah, one can find again and again, either directly or slightly indirectly, where the Torah is telling us your body, your physical life, not just your spiritual life, but your material life is very important to God, and it's very, very sacred. And therefore, you should treat it as such.